To the biggest news story of the week, this extraordinary decision by Daniel Andrews to cancel Victoria's Commonwealth Games just a few years out from the start date. Now, I could spend hours analysing just how poorly this whole thing has been managed, but what really struck me was the spin.
But I'm not going to apologise for not taking money out of hospitals and schools. If you go and spend $4 billion, or maybe even more than that, over and above what you've budgeted, the opportunity cost, so all the things you don't do, that which you go without, well, that's everything. That could be housing, could be hospital beds, could be police, ambulance, roads.
This man didn't even have the integrity to apologise for stuffing this opportunity up. Instead, he painted critics of his decision as being economically irresponsible. He argued that funding is a binary option. Either you can host big events or you can fund hospitals. What a ridiculous proposition. The facts are clear. Andrews put up his hand and asked to host this event. His government wanted to do this elaborate games across regional cities. Now, the Sydney Morning Herald has done some sensational reporting on this. They stated that the Andrews government made the Commonwealth Games Federation give them an unopposed bid. That means New South Wales, which was interested, could not bid. Then they spent all this money with consultants at EY to come up with a $2.6 billion plan, which involved some truly ludicrous and wasteful ideas. The Sydney Morning Herald reports 2 full-sized Olympic pools were to be built. One would then be demolished after the closing ceremony. In Bendigo, a velodrome would be purpose-built for the Games and then torn down, leaving no lasting benefit to any would-be track cyclist inspired by the event. This saga was a failure of planning and competency right from the start. No one is suggesting billions of dollars should be pulled out of hospitals to fund a bad plan. People just want to know why such a ridiculous plan was ever signed off. So how did Daniel Andrews respond to these legitimate questions that we all have?
I try and be clear. I think I have been clear. But let me just say this again. We were never going to run the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. The only reason we were even remotely interested in having the Commonwealth Games is if it was regional. And you are now putting that to me. So tell us who was responsible for that? No, I think we've already been there. I'm not going to respond to claims that have been made. This is quite extraordinary. In the time that you've been here with me, have I walked away from one of these? No. Therefore, there's no need. Therefore, with the greatest of respect, there is no need for you to be machine gunning questions at me. I will answer the question. You may not like the answer, but I'll answer the question. Who was responsible? Okay, just be very clear. I am not going to be conducting negotiations here.
What an arrogant and spiteful man he is. This is a politician who has been in office for far too long and no longer thinks he needs to be accountable to questions. Caroline, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, mostly on Monday, I was shocked by Daniel Andrews' newfound interest in opportunity cost and cost benefit, which is something which has been totally absent from his governance of Victoria thus far. So I found it very, very interesting that all of a sudden it was front and centre of his decision-making. I'm sure quite a few people, particularly during COVID, would have liked a bit more of that, and it was nowhere to be seen. But as far as his dealing with journalists goes, I mean, incredibly arrogant. And look, it's almost become a sport for Daniel Andrews in gaslighting the media to not have to answer questions and then pretending to have respect for people, which you can tell he has absolutely no respect for. And I will say this week, kudos to the gallery down in Victoria, kudos to The Age. I think those guys have done an incredible job this week in keeping keeping this story up and really dealing with it from a whole number of aspects. I know we're usually up here having a crack at the media, but I think the Victorian media this week has actually done really quite a good job because you wouldn't get this level of gaslighting and stroppiness out of Daniel Andrews if the media were being a walkover.
Yeah, such a good point. And I should point out that those articles we referenced in the editorial were from The Age as well and syndicated to the Sydney Morning Herald by Chip LeGrand wrote them. Some incredible reporting. But Tim, I think, look, Caroline's got such a great point there with Daniel Andrews is attempting to paint himself as this economic conservative now. Where was that during COVID? Where did that come from?
Well, you can understand his concern about hospital fundings, given how much time he spends on them personally. But it is amazing as well that he's been able to get away with this idea. And you pointed out this zero-sum notion that it's either hospitals or instantly destroyed velodromes in Bendigo. You can have one or either. But wasn't that the pattern? If he's suddenly gone zero-sum after previously backing the Commonwealth Games and after committing several $1 billion, we're talking about, I think nigh on $3 billion to host them in the first place. So it's not exactly, not exactly potato chips. And now it goes a bit beyond that, significantly. Then it comes down to hospitals being built. Well, he was prepared to throw $3 billion away on velodromes and temporary stands and temporary formats and so on. Why was it not an issue then? And the media, as Caroline's pointed out, they have done a good job, especially on the numbers, which is a bit of a challenge for many of us journalists. Hands up.
When you factor in inflation every year, which obviously has skyrocketed since 2021 when they made that bid, which was in the middle of COVID, the numbers probably should have been anticipated that there was going to be a massive cost blowout. But I think the main thing is to build an Olympic swimming pool and then demolish it the day the Games is over. That is ridiculous, and no economic conservative would ever do that.